Now, what Paul does next, look at verse 8. What Paul does next is Paul shows us that God blinded Israel many times in their history because of their rejection of him. God blinded Israel many times in the Old Testament because of their rejection of him and because of their unbelief. Look at verse 8. Just as it is written, God has given them a spirit of stupor. God has given them a spirit of stupor. God did it. And God has given them eyes that they should not see and ears that they should not hear to this very day. God made it where they were unable to see and unable to hear. And David said, let their table become a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a recompense to them. They became trapped in their religious zeal. They're trapped in their religious practices, even to this day. And you may know some people, you may have some people in your family that they're not born again, but they're very religious. And you try to share the gospel with them, and they'll say, I'm a Catholic. Or I go to Mass every morning. Or I'm a Lutheran. Or whatever it may be. And they're trapped in it now. Where they can't even hear the gospel. They can't even receive the truth because they've trapped themselves in their religion. That's what happened with the Jews. He says in verse 10, let their eyes be darkened so that they do not see, and bow down their back always. What Paul is saying here, it's very interesting what he's laying out here. What he's saying is when God blinded Israel because they rejected Jesus Christ, it was not something new. It was not something different. God blinded Israel previously in their history because of their apostasy. Paul quotes from, if you're taking notes, he quotes from 3 different sections in the Old Testament. He quotes from the law, he quotes from the prophets, and he quotes from the Psalms. And those are the 3 divisions of the Old Testament according to the Jews. They would divide the Hebrew Bible up into the law, the prophets, and the Psalms, and they would use that phrase. Jesus used it in Luke chapter 24, verse 44. After the resurrection, he's talking about all the things that he had to fulfill, he says, in the law and the prophets and in the Psalms. In all of the Old Testament, he's saying. That's the 3 divisions of the Hebrew Bible, what we call the Old Testament. And what Paul is showing us here by quoting from these 3 different sections of the Old Testament, he's saying all throughout Israel's history with God, there were times when God sent blindness upon Israel because of their deliberate, intentional rebellion and rejection, because of their apostasy. So when God sent blindness upon Israel because of their rejection of Jesus Christ, that wasn't really something new in their history. That wasn't something unusual. God had sent blindness upon Israel many, many times before because of their apostasy. So God has sent blindness upon Israel. Now look down at verse 25. Look at verse 25. And some of you are thinking, did I doze off for a minute? Weren't we just on like verse 8 and now we're at verse 25? What did I miss? Verse 25, for I do not desire, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own opinion, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in, and so all Israel will be saved. Paul says there's a blindness upon Israel because of the rejection of Jesus Christ, but it's a partial blindness. It's blindness in part. Not every Israelite has been made blind. It's a blindness in part, it's partial, and it's temporary. It's only until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in, and then the blindness will be lifted from Israel. Their eyes will be opened to see Jesus Christ as their Messiah, and at that time, all Israel that is living at that time will be saved. Now, verse 11, our final verse. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Certainly not. But through their fall, to provoke them to jealousy, salvation has come to the Gentiles. Here's the second question. Has Israel fallen away permanently? Has Israel fallen away beyond recovery because they rejected Jesus Christ? And Paul answers, certainly not. How dare you even suggest that? It's not even a possibility for Israel to fall away from God beyond recovery. Their apostasy and the resulting blindness is not irreversible. It's not permanent, as we just read down in verse 25. The blindness is temporary. And God is using this time of blindness for Israel to bring salvation to Gentiles. And so this has opened up an opportunity for Gentiles to come to saving faith in Jesus Christ. By show of hands, how many of you here are Gentiles? Raise your hand. Aren't you glad that salvation was opened up for Gentiles? And so there's this temporary window here where there's blindness upon Israel because they rejected Jesus Christ. And so God is now doing a work among the Gentiles until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. And then he's going to lift the blindness off of Israel, and they're going to believe in Jesus Christ, and they're going to be saved. And at that time, all Israel will be saved. And so you, as a Gentile, used to be blind. And then your eyes were opened to Jesus Christ, and you were saved. Israel is experiencing a blindness right now, so that Gentiles can be saved. In the future, their eyes will be opened to Jesus Christ, and they'll be saved. So both Jews and Gentiles will come to salvation through Jesus Christ.